Hello everyone, I'm Greg Weaver. Welcome to the Audio Analyst. Pardon me. Before we delve into today's guilty treasure, the 1975 Genesis masterpiece, A Trick of the Tail, I'd like to take just a moment to thank all my subscribers for their gracious and kind comments and the overwhelming support of my work here on the channel. I'm so grateful to report that the channel has surpassed my wildest hopes and is growing and receiving support in ways I wouldn't have expected or even hoped for. Thank you all so much. Further, if you like what I'm doing here, if you in any way find merit or value in these conversations, maybe today is the day I'll earn your subscription. Please take a moment to subscribe and to click like on the episodes you enjoy and to share links to your favorite episodes with friends via social media. And don't forget to leave your comments for any episodes. I try to respond to them all. And should you feel as though you would like to support future videos and in the process receive exclusive access and content, then please consider becoming a patron by using one of the links in the comments section below this video. There are many ways to contribute to the channel, including a wide diversity of Patreon subscription levels. Or if a one-time donation using something like PayPal or Venmo makes more sense for you, I provided that account information as well. Your support at any level enables me to continue producing these videos and is sincerely appreciated. Now, the founding members of Genesis had all met at the famous Charterhouse School, a boarding school in the borough of Waverley in Surrey, England. Originally founded by Thomas Sutton in 1611, on the site of the old Carthusian monastery in Charterhouse Square, it is one of the original 9 great English public schools. But much less interested in schoolwork than playing music, in 1965, a young Peter Gabriel formed the band Garden Wall, with Tony Banks on piano and Chris Stewart on drums. Genesis was born just 2 years later, in January of 1967, abandoning Garden Wall and adding Anthony Phillips on guitar and Mike Rutherford on bass, both of whom had been members of another Charterhouse School band, Anon. After the release of their first 2 albums, 1969's From Genesis to Revelations and 1970's Trespass, both of which, if we're being honest, have little relevance to the Genesis canon, save for their historical context, both Chris Stewart and Anthony Phillips left, or maybe were asked to leave, depending on whose version you get, setting the stage for 2 rather important members to join Genesis. Born and raised in West London, Phil Collins had started playing the drums by the age of 5. But he had seriously pursued drama school training, an endeavor that had actually secured him various roles as a child actor. But it didn't take long before the pursuit of a music career won out, and he joined Genesis in 1970, replacing departing drummer Chris Stewart in time to record 1971's Nursery Crime, the album which also saw the addition of guitarist Steve Hackett to their lineup, a former member of Quiet World. But it was with 1972's Foxtrot that most would agree that Genesis really began to pull all of their varied inspirations into a cohesive sound, especially with the fantastical 22-minute closer on side 2, Supper's Ready, the almost side-long suite that remains one of the group's defining creations. Now, following 1973's Selling England by the Pound and 1974's double LP, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, Peter Gabriel abruptly decided to call it quits. Now, the way Gabriel explained it at the time was that the stifling nature of the international rock star lifestyle was just too much. But with no question that Genesis would soldier on without him, the remaining members found themselves faced with the task of finding a suitable replacement vocalist. After having reputedly auditioned over 400 vocalists to replace Gabriel with no clear successor in sight, and production deadlines for the coming album looming, the band headed into Trident Studios to lay down backing tracks for the song Squonk. Now, somehow, the band had convinced Collins to sing the lead for the session, to establish the guide vocal for the backing voices to follow. Even though he strongly objected, as he had no intention of giving up the role of drummer, his performance was so impressive that it dawned on all the rest of the members of the band that they already had a member who could step up and actually front the band. Now, still somewhat uncomfortable with the role, Collins undeniably stepped up his game as the new frontman. And as a band, they had decided not to pursue the stylish, edgy postmodernism of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, a path that Gabriel himself would follow closely throughout his solo career. And instead, they chose to return to the more eccentric style found on Selling England by the Pound and earlier works. Honestly, in almost every aspect, A Trick of the Tail feels like a truer sequel to Selling England by the Pound than The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, which had been a distinct step away from their more common, overtly literary references, and was a full-fledged concept double album, essentially a massive rock opera. Now, interestingly enough, even as the first album without Gabriel, a fact that had raised considerable concern amongst the fan base and the critics, it was the first Genesis record to actually show reasonable sales numbers. In fact, it considerably outsold all the band's previous releases, making it all the way to number 3 in the UK. Its overwhelmingly positive reception by the music critics proved that the group could not only survive the loss of Gabriel, but could deliver a remarkable album and thrive. And guys, when you look at it, it makes perfect sense. It's only natural. You know, Peter Gabriel had written considerably fewer songs for the band to that point than you might think. In fact, most Gabriel songs have been written by Tony Banks or Mike Rutherford, with some input from Steve Hackett after he joined, and Gabriel to a lesser extent. So, if you are wondering why, even though A Trick of the Tail ramps up the energy, complexity, sophistication of composition, and timekeeping, yet still maintains the musical DNA of the earlier Genesis works, it's because of Banks, Rutherford, and Hackett, as they had always been the musical heart of the band. Yet, Collins' performance here is supremely confident, especially for someone who was, by all accounts, very reluctant to step into the role of lead singer. And with this album, he joined another very small club, guys. That's rock bands whose drummer was the lead singer. The two best other examples are Levon Helm of the band and Don Henley of the Eagles. And his drumming is the most inspired it had been to this point, and clearly foreshadows his solo work to come, like that found on In the Air Tonight. He simply redefined rock and pop drumming with the kind of playing he brings us with these performances. From its richly nuanced and infectiously catchy ballads such as Ripples and one of my favorites, Mad Men Moon, to the big blustering movements like those from Dance on a Volcano, Squonk, Robbery, Assault and Battery, and Los Sendos. There is no doubt that this album is more accessible and considerably less pretentious than any done with Peter Gabriel. And to that end, I actually find it somewhat interesting that Gabriel made a similar move to be less flowery and ornate, starting with the songwriting on his superb eponymous solo album that same year. Starting with side 1, track 1, we have Dance on a Volcano. Wow. The opening track was the first song written for the album and opens with an amazing intro written by Hackett and Rutherford. Name a better opening track on a Genesis LP. I dare you. Driven by Mike Rutherford's bass, as it develops, The exceptional interplay between Hackett's and Rutherford's crisp and incisive guitars and Banks' mellotron combines with Collins' superb breezy drum work, defining the musical direction here. Broiling with hints of mystery and complexity and peppered with real slam, you can almost feel the band's new self-confidence with every note they play. Collins' vocals fit the song so very well that after just this one magnificent, compelling cut, I could almost forget that Genesis ever had another singer. It's amazing. You get the feeling that they are taking their own lyrical advice from this very song. Better start doing it right. It's fabulous. Side 1, track 2 is Entangled. Entangled was originally a Hackett tune that Banks liked so much that he stepped in to write its chorus and closing synthesizer solo. Following its slow melodic opening with light strumming, some percussion, chimes, and bells, the guitar slowly leads into that fantastic series of verses. Its remarkable melody and exceptional harmonies are loaded with the drive and an infectious charm. It's just amazing. Now, this pastoral mood is underlined by the brooding work from Banks' then new ARP Pro solo synthesizer. At about 4:30, his synth takes the lead, playing a solo that slowly and powerfully just growls, made all the more engaging, first with Hackett's guitar, then even more so by Rutherford's supporting bass. And as it winds down to its finish, you just aren't prepared for cut 3. Side 1, track 3 is Squonk. Wow! This cut will get your attention. Such a strutting, powerful opening by Hackett, Rutherford, and Collins, soon joined by Banks' intensifying keyboards. This cut is such a powerhouse, and Collins' drum work, especially the cymbals and tom rolls, is just spectacular. Squonk is a dynamic, soaring cut. Banks and Rutherford, who composed and wrote it, said that the Led Zeppelin song Kashmir is what inspired it. Exemplary drumming from Collins dramatically enhances Rutherford's stirring bass work, conflating into a sound that thunders through your listening room. This stirring musical concoction clearly establishes the base for the superb new sounds in this reimagined post-Gabriel Genesis cosmos, and it is so infectious. Side 1, track 4 is Madman Moon. Wow, again. Tony Banks had written this for use on his own solo release, but it was brought as a complete work to the recording sessions, and along with Dance on a Volcano and Squonk, is one of my favorite cuts on the album. Yeah, but who am I kidding? I love the whole damn thing. From its opening, lilting, mysterious keyboard work, Collins' wistful vocals bloom with a melancholy that can be heard on many of the songs on this album, and helps to build the dynamic tension to the point when all the band's voices join in chorus. You cannot resist its almost classical flair. Near its middle, we are presented with an orchestral instrumental that opens at about 2:30 with castanets. Yet Banks' complex and brilliant piano work that follows imbues it with incontrovertible magic. Banks' capable keyboard work is the star here on this cut, with his meandering, rising and falling contributions picking up speed again after the instrumental break, before losing itself back into the melancholy, fading quietly into flute and piano musings. Side 2, track 1 is Robbery, Assault, and Battery. Now, this song was mostly written by Tony Banks in an attempt, he claimed, to replicate the humor of some of Gabriel's earlier lyrics. And Collins, who also contributed to the track, sings the song in character, borrowing from one of his earlier roles as an actor, playing the Artful Dodger in Oliver before focusing on his music career. The keys and percussion of the opening place great focus on the context of Collins' lyrics here, as his drumming picks up and assists with its swagger. At about a minute in, you are hit with the propulsive and powerful chorus. I'll admit to absolutely loving the trappings around the peripheries of this song, maybe even more so than its chorus. There is an ethereal synth solo that segues into an elegant, soaring neoclassical departure around 3 minutes in, before we are returned to the bravado of the verses and chorus. And at about the 4:20 mark, Tony Banks takes off on a superb keyboard interlude before rounding back to the skeletal structure of the tune, and we are treated to a number of these colorful vignettes before the song concludes. Side 2, track 2, is Ripples. Now, Ripples was a combination of a 12-string guitar piece composed by Rutherford and what became the piano-driven midsection as written by Banks. Opening with Hackett's softly strummed guitar, Collins' lyrics are delivered with a pensive, almost longing intonation, riding just over the harmony. Banks' keyboard work joins in, almost imperceptibly at first. But there is such an expressive beauty of melody here, building as the vocals soar, leading the way into the more serene and harmonic content of the verses. Now, while the guitar and keyboards continue to craft enchanting melodies, all beautifully punctuated by Collins' superb timekeeping, it builds to those soaring and evocative vocal releases. We've clearly returned to the melancholy, but with tons of vocal and melodic magic. The use of the slowed tempo and complex chords complete some stirring images. Everything combines to swell into the concluding 2 minutes with the final rousing verse. Side 2, track 3, is A Trick of the Tail. The title cut is another Banks composition in its entirety. Remember what I said about who wrote most of the music for Genesis earlier? From its buoyant piano opening, sprinkled with delightful percussion and Collins' vocals, it soon opens into a powerful chorus of all their voices. It offers an incredibly delicate and exhilarating balance between their voices and the captivating musical arrangements, with lots of ethereal riffs and phrasing. Side 2, track 4, is Los Sendos. Essentially an instrumental, it draws heavily upon the various melodies from most songs on the album, assembling them into one powerful new tune with its own unique character. Opening guitar and keys are slow, but again, building on Collins' percussion and aided by Rutherford's bass guitar, it soon develops some highly charged energy. And you are unable to deny the influences from the fusion and jazz rock genres that Collins infused. With soaring keys from Banks and the repeating of phrases by nearly every instrument, it all joins to build tension, only to be released in conjunction with the reprise of Squonk and the almost unrecognizable lyrics in the closing minute of the song. Thus concludes the Genesis magnum opus. Now, I've touched on this earlier, but I, and so many of my colleagues and friends, simply find the music, performance, and, to large degree, the sound quality of A Trick of the Tail to represent the most engaging, inspired, creative, exceptional, accessible, and enjoyable music that any iteration of Genesis ever produced. It glimmers and shines with a glory and majesty unmatched by any other Genesis record. Now, speaking of sound quality pressings, my preferred LP pressing is, surprise, the 1981 Mobile Fidelity Remaster, MFSL1-062. It offers excellent extension at both extremes, has the best bass definition I've heard, and offers good clarity and detail with rich and reasonably accurate tonal color, and has stirring dynamics. And while I no longer have my copy, the original Gatefold UK Charisma pressing would be my next choice. But I have to tell you, even this old analog hound is pretty fond of the Atco Rhino 2002 remaster on Redbook CD. R2 128-700. Now, I bought the version that includes the entire album in DTS surround, 24-bit 96 kilohertz, and in Dolby Digital surround at 24-bit 48 kilohertz. And it gives me no end of satisfaction to tell you that this 2007 Atco Rhino remastered version is available to stream as a 16-bit 44 kilohertz FLAC file from Qobuz. It's great. I have included that link in the comments section, guys. With that, I'd like to offer my sincere thanks for taking time to drop by and visit today. Please stay safe and keep the music playing. Till next time, cheers.